You guys all set? Hi, everybody. The microphones work. Thanks so much, folks. You obviously took my advice and chatted amongst yourselves, because that was quite a lively luncheon. I'm now just going to quickly introduce my colleague, Christine Hawley-Dare-Bryan, who's going to run a panel to talk about some of the important issues that we talk about in Crain's all the time, but don't always get a chance to talk about in a forum like this. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Brendan. I'm thrilled to be here moderating this event today. Brendan O'Connor actually asked me to do this event on my birthday, and it feels like my birthday being in your presence because you're all just amazing, and it's great to be here. So I want to recognize and celebrate every woman in this room who's being honored today. You know, we can all be a bit self-critical, so just enjoy and celebrate yourselves today. You've made it, you're here. Enjoy the burrata, your shoes are fabulous, you're amazing. You should know that. Also, please make a note to yourself to try to meet at least one other person in this room today. I worked at Crain's 15 years ago and made some of my best mentors, contacts from that time who have carried me through to this day. So use me as an excuse, just go and say hi to someone you've never met. You don't know how much they'll influence you in the future. So now on to our amazing panel. First, to my immediate left is Lorraine Brown, who's the CEO of One Brooklyn Health System. We have Mary Callahan-Erdos, who's the CEO of Asset and Wealth Management for JP Morgan Chase & Co. We have Senator Andrea Stewart-Cousins, who's the temporary president and majority leader of the New York State Senate. And we have Marianne Tai, the Chief Executive Officer of the New York's Tri-State Region for the real estate brokerage CBRE, and frankly, one of the most powerful women in real estate. So when we were planning this event, I was working with Brendan, our managing editor, and Courtney, our amazing event organizer, and we were talking about how we started talking with Senator Cousins, how you are one of the first women to break into a room in Albany that's never had women. And we realized, stepping back, that all 4 women on this stage have been in rooms where women have never been before, corridors of power, rooms of power. And I just wanted to see if you could kind of take us through what that first experience was like, what you really remember from that moment, starting with Lorraine.
Just checking. So what I would say was the first experience was wondering if anyone was listening to me, because I would say something and then a man would essentially repeat what I said. I don't know if you've had that experience. And then, I would say, I got to a point where I would say, I just said that. Because before I'd gotten to that point, the conversation would ensue, and folks would say, oh, that's such a great idea. And then I decided I was going to take back my idea.
Oh, that's very interesting. Yeah.
Excellent. Well, first of all, happy birthday.
Thank you.
So I think, I don't know, maybe I'm just getting too old, but it was very long ago that I was the only woman in the room, and I think at that point, when you're that young, it doesn't make any difference. You don't sort of even know, and you go and you do your job and you become a subject matter expert and you work really hard, and people either want to hear what you have to say or not, and you make your way through it. I feel incredibly blessed to work at JP Morgan Chase, and we have 260,000 people, of which over half of the whole organization is female. So that's a really fabulous thing, and it starts at the top and it trickles all the way down, and you just can't stand for rooms like that, which definitely exist all over this world, and it's each and every one of us that has to sit and listen to the other person, and you shouldn't have to say that was my idea. Someone else should say, that's just what Lorraine just said.
Well, they're not saying that anymore.
We know. We've heard all the way from Brooklyn.
Well, first of all, ditto to that. I think we've all been in those places where people don't hear it when you say it. From my experience, as Christine said, I am the only woman who is in the proverbial room who's been elected, because the three men in the room in Albany are the governor, the majority leader, and the speaker. Those are the proverbial three men in the room. So I'm the first woman leader in the history of New York. So now people say, well, how is it being in the room? And I said, I don't know how it was being in the room before. I don't know, and the men aren't telling me whether the temperature of the room has changed. But I do know that my presence in the room empowers each and every one of the women in this room, and I love it. Thank you.
So for me, a slightly different take on this. When Christine asked the question, it brought me back to a moment that was probably, I would think, 4 or 5 years ago, where I went to a negotiation for a customer of our firm, CBRE, and I went with my colleagues. We were a team negotiating this transaction, and we walked into the room, and we sat on the other side of the table, and our counterparties looked at us and said, wow, we're nervous. And I said, what are you talking about? And they said, we've never negotiated against a team that is 100% female. And I hadn't even noticed that our team was all women. I mean, it's an incredible thing. And it was, I don't know, Ariel, I don't think you were on that team. It was Teach for America. And I have to say that I knew that we had come to a place where it was, at least as far as CBRE, where it was as natural as could be to have a team that just happened to be all women, and that's the way it, and by the way, we killed on that deal.
That really leads to my next question about power. How do you kind of define and view power? Is it being the only woman in the room? Is it something very different from that? And also, do you really kind of think of yourself as powerful and kind of getting your head around that? Let's start with Mary. Yeah.
So I define power as being given an opportunity to make life better for many. It's not about me. It's about what I do. My colleague next to me talked about being a subject matter expert. So I define power as being able, because of knowledge, because of hard work, because I have information that I can put on the table to make people's lives better. And so I've spent my entire career working in the public sphere, working for the municipal hospital system, now working for a small safety net system in Brooklyn, working in a low-income community at a high school, which is one of my first jobs. And for me, the power comes from knowing that when I walk away from a project or a job, that things are better for the people for whom I'm working.
Power is a funny and strange word. I think of it more as influence and responsibility. And so when you work super hard and you get to a position of influence, you have to do something with that influence, and you have to make a difference, and it has to be long lasting. And one of the things that I'm super proud of us doing at JP Morgan is that there are 6 of us women on the operating committee of JP Morgan Chase that each report directly to Jamie, and together we started something called Women on the Move, which is, we used to have these senior leaders meetings where we brought everybody to New York, and of course you can't fly everybody of 260,000 people divided by half, so you only bring the senior ones. And instead, we took that out, and we as a group went out to all the different regions, to the branches in Arizona, to the office in Tokyo, etc., and tried to figure out how we were going to empower people to see that they could go as far as they wanted to go, that we needed to make changes in different places. We wanted to hear what their issues were. There are different issues if you're a teller than they are if you're a professional sitting in an office in Hong Kong. And how do we make sure that the things that have been afforded to us can be afforded to others? And I think that's a very important thing we do, and it ties right into what you said, which is you have to make a long-lasting change on the organization that you're in.
Power for me is so many dimensions. I think the first thing is the power to know who you are wherever you are, and the power to recognize your power. Because no matter where you are, there's going to be somebody who's going to think you shouldn't be there. And unless you actually know who you are and why you are actually the best person to be there, you don't have power. So the power has to start from within. And then when you walk outside, and I remember just very anecdotally, the first time I was elected as a county legislator, I was going to visit a housing development. And when I got there, I was shown a playground. And I was told later that that playground did not exist the week before. They built the playground because I was coming. Now I go everywhere I can where they need to see me.
I'm going to pick up on that. Is that the best story ever? Because the first thing is, women are always reluctant, I think, to embrace the fact that they have power. And at the end of the day, what does it mean? It's the ability to execute and to influence and to have a vision of something and to have others share the vision and get you there. And one of the things that is fascinating to me as I look around, I'm looking at Kathy, I'm looking at Kathy Wilde and Darryl Roth, Surrey eating lunch, and I'm realizing how different each of these ladies are, but how immensely powerful they are and how they are utterly comfortable with it too. There's no disclaimer that they issue when they have an idea. They claim the idea, they share it, and then they lead others to it. So I think that is, and the great thing about power is, if you have to say you have it, we all know you don't have it. So,
No, that's right.
but a playground, that's power.
I really want to kind of explore, when you were all younger, did you envision having so much power, being so successful? What were your childhood ambitions and goals and expectations? Did you think you'd be running a hospital system? Is that what you played when you were younger?
Absolutely not.
Okay.
But what I did envision is that I would be in a position that was different than that of my parents.
Okay.
That being the first person in my family to go to college, I knew that I had a great deal of responsibility because of that and because of their sacrifices. And not just their sacrifices, but aunties and uncles, some of whom were blood relatives, some of whom were not, but a community of people who had expectations of me and my sisters. And so I knew that I had to do something that would make them proud, even if they never knew, ultimately, because both of my parents are deceased, so they don't know where I am now. But I know that I'm making them proud. And I know that I'm making my family and my extended family and people who grew up in Newark, New Jersey, in the middle of the South Ward, where we watched the Army come through during the riots. I know that what I'm doing contributes to people who may not have had hope, but who can have hope in just looking at my accomplishments.
you know, if there was a panel of men up here, I don't think people would ask the question, did you ever think that you could become like the head of whatever, right?
Right.
And that's because the generations that raised us didn't have events like this to celebrate these kind of things. And so it's because of Crain's and other organizations that celebrate women that make this so normal and so okay that when I think about my 3 daughters, there's no doubt in their mind that they're going to do all of this. None. But they don't know whether it's going to be in hospital or in government or in real estate or in the arts or what it is. But it's definitely not banking, by the way. They're sure of that. And so it's just one of those things where we think about it because maybe we didn't have all of those models in front of us that we could look up to. But when I look out at the young people in this audience, like, there's nothing you can't do. Nothing. Nothing. And so thank you, Crain's, for doing this and making it so we can all come together to remember that.
And of course, you know, when I was growing up, Crain's wouldn't have had any women to actually celebrate. You know, I mean, there's a reality. Nor would Crain's have been expected to celebrate any women. I mean, the reality was when I was growing up, and I was growing up in the 60s, so we were in a time where, did I think I'd ever be in government? No. You know, did I ever see anyone that looked like me in government? You know, Shirley Chisholm. But she was certainly an anomaly. In fact, women in these positions in general were very rarely seen. And for those of you who are thinking, like, how would you ever do that? Trust me, I couldn't even speak in public when I was in my teens or in my 20s, and even going into my 30s, I had a phobia. So my journey has been extraordinary for me, and because it's been so extraordinary, I love to share it, because I know that because I'm sitting here, because I have a story, it's so that other people can understand the opportunities that they have to recreate whoever it is you think you are, whoever it is you might want to be. So no, I never saw me. In fact, you're talking about I mean, when we were growing up, you were going to be a nurse. You would not be running a hospital system. No.
So, in my mind, it's a question of both gender and class. I grew up in a working class family in the South Bronx. The issue of do you go to college was a huge issue. The issue of could you pay rent was a huge issue. So I wasn't so focused, I think, on gender. I had the great blessing, all men in the audience, and I applaud the men who came today. Yes, indeed. I have to say, my father, I'm the eldest of my siblings, and my father was a believer in me. And that was so profound for me that it was about, to this day, the proudest day of my life was when I'm going to be choked up thinking of it, when I won the scholarship to college that my father's firm, the Timken Roller Bearing Company, gave to this man who worked in a warehouse. His daughter won. There's never been another day that I have been prouder of myself than that day.
That leads to my next question about who has had the biggest impacts on your careers. Has it been other women? Has it been men? And really taking off, departing from Marianne's point, who is that person for you all?
Well, I'm going to take off of Marianne's point because I remember my father, who had 3 daughters, telling all of us that we could do whatever we wanted and that he expected us to do better and to achieve. So of course, you have to start with your parents. But I also had mentors along the way who realized for me that I could do more than what I thought I could do. One of my best friends to this day, of 40 years of friendship, was my first mentor, who actually said, you can do this. You can, and I, take on a job that I thought was bigger than I could handle. Another mentor here in New York, who happened to be the chairperson of the board, who also said, I know that if I give you this project, you will get it done. So part of it was just having people who would say, you can get it done. I have faith in you, which for me, it was I couldn't disappoint them, right? And therefore, I had to get it done. But I'd also say, there's mentors, and then there are partners, and then there are folks who support you. So throughout my career, I've had colleagues who, and I hope, saw that we were our support system.
Okay.
And in having a support system, similar to what you were saying about going out into the different regions and pulling in the women and saying, what do you need to be able to do what you want to do? I am lucky to have had colleagues over the years that we could share our doubts of ourselves with one another, to be buoyed by them saying, no, don't doubt that, you can get it done. So it's mentors and colleagues, and I think being a woman, and particularly a woman of color, sometimes you need both, because oftentimes you may not find that mentor, but if you can wrap yourselves around a support system, then you can succeed as well. Thank you.
Yeah.
I think that's so important. I would say three things. One, exactly what you said. A mentor sees something in you that you don't see in yourself. And so you need those people in your life. But the second thing is that a mentor is someone who will tell you what you don't want to hear. And that's really important. And the third thing is you have to be mentorable. And mentorable means that you don't come out of a meeting and say, how'd I do? Because you know what the answer is going to be? Great. Like, what else do people say? That's just like a hello. And so if you're mentorable and you want to learn and you want to get better, you will say, so I just want to know one thing I could have done better in that meeting. Now you have a mentoring moment and you have told the person you want to be mentored. And I think that's super important.
So I think for me, the roots would be my parents. I always say I had parents who, despite what everything looked like, so my dad was a World War II veteran, Purple Heart, Bronze Star, and when he came home, he wasn't eligible for the GI Bill as we understand it. So we lived in the Amsterdam housings not too far from here. My mom typed 100 words a minute, and corporate America would not hire her because of the color of her skin. So the realities of they're still, under those circumstances, encouraging us every single day and showing us by their hard work, despite the obstacles and doors closed, have created a foundation for me that allows me to understand the difference of how I'm living. Yes, I was the first person to go to college as well, but also recognize how they had to survive and the passion for education and faith and family that they put in me. When I fast forward, I would say that, again, in politics, but I never expected to be in politics, but what I did expect to do, quite honestly, is to fight for justice and fight for the right things to happen. And so my mentors were those heroes every day that stood up in the face of tremendous odds and still kept forward. And I fortunately married a wonderful man who insisted that I was great. And I said, okay. And never wavered. So I've had, such great support from family. And then when I got into this larger world of politics, other women in politics who might not have had the chance to always say do this or do that, because in politics it's hard. Every day is different, every issue is different. There's nobody who can say this is the right thing, this is the wrong thing. But they could show every single day grace under doubt, grace under fear, grace under immeasurable odds. And so from my mentors like Anita Lowy or Susie Oppenheimer and Lois Bronze, what I learned was grace under pressure.
A little grace could help, right?
So when I think about professionally, the people who've been most helpful to me, mentoring me, supporting me, it's the people who brought me into the room, is the way I would characterize it. You know the Hamilton song. And if you need someone to help you get into that room, it doesn't mean that you're going to lead the discussion or lead the negotiation or the process, but it's certainly what I do. I don't know about the others at this table. I don't think there's a book I could pick up and hand to somebody and say, this is how you get to be successful at commercial real estate in New York City. I mean, this volume doesn't exist because I would have read it, I would have memorized it, I promise you, if it existed. It is, it's passed on from one generation to the next, and I think until the generation just before me, it was only passed on from one man to another man. And I was blessed with a woman who managed to get into the room herself, and her name is Carol Nelson, and I can tell you that she took me to those rooms, and I got to sit and learn the business, watching it transpire in front of me. And I think that is the way to learn. By the way, I had a wonderful happy moment just recently. CBRE has a wonderful summer intern program. We had over 50 interns in our Midtown or our Manhattan offices this summer. And my mentor, Carol Nelson's granddaughter, Lena Nelson, was one of the interns. And I promise you, I did not put my finger on the scale. Out of all the interns, she won the prize for the presentation that she made. So it was like at this moment of sort of the circle rounding. But that's what you want. You want someone who will take you along with them and show you how it's done.
It's been amazing talking with all of you before this panel about mentoring and how it's been either very specific individuals or it's been fathers, it's been colleagues, it's been the whole breadth of friends and family. Now that you're in a position to mentor others, I've loved hearing about the programs you've all been involved with in mentoring. And if you could just take the audience through, starting with you, Lorraine, about how the types of activities and programs and mentoring things that you work on every day is just really interesting and illuminating.
Well, I don't work on mentoring programs every day, but I do get an opportunity through different venues, like the Greater New York Hospital Association. They have a program for young folks diverse, who are looking to enter into the healthcare, and particularly healthcare administration area, and have gone to speak to them, but also have afforded them opportunities to spend a summer working within Interfaith or our One Brooklyn facilities. The other area that I'm most proud of is the National Association of Public Hospitals. They've changed their name, but the American Essential Hospitals. But they had a fellows program for people who were in healthcare but not yet the CEOs or the COOs, but for individuals, for them, it was how do we nurture, how do we bring information to bear for the folks who are really in the trenches, working in public safety net hospitals. And I was proud to be the chairperson of that, president of that organization, and to help to influence how that program was designed. And I made it my business every year to make sure that there were a lot of people from New York City's health and hospitals who participated in that. And I believe that from those programs, people get not just the sort of content information, but it's that networking, it's the establishment of those relationships. Because whether you're in New York or in Chicago or in Boston, if you're working on similar issues, you can pick up the phone and say, well, how are you all dealing with that? And so I'm most proud of my involvement in those kinds of activities.
I would, lots of mentoring. I actually think, just like I said before, that the next generation, and you can see them here in this room, they need little mentoring, but not much. And the next gen that probably doesn't need a lot of it right now. The generation that I think needs the most mentoring are the ones that aren't sitting in this room. The ones that were at a company where when they had to make a choice in their life of prioritizing different things and there wasn't flexibility in the workforce, they opted out. And they have a very hard time getting back in. And so one of the things we did at JP Morgan, and all of you can do this at your company, is we run something called a reentry program. And we run it like a summer internship, but we do it in the fall, because summer's not the greatest time for people who are trying to think. And we do it like a summer internship where we say, we got 3 months with each other, okay? And then it's gonna end. You come, we see how you're functioning, you see if you like going to work every day, and then it's over. I don't have to fire you at the end of it, and you get to see, I get to see, and we get to test. And it takes that barrier of like, are you sure you're gonna know how to come back into the workforce, and are you sure you're gonna be dedicated? And we run it, and we have such, it's something like 100 to 1 in applications to slots that we have, just right here in New York City. And I think each and every one of us can do that and try and get the women who aren't in this room back in the workforce.
You know, when I was asked to be part of this panel, you know, I was in awe of the panelists. And I say that because I don't care where you are. I think there's always an opportunity to be mentored. And so no matter where, you know, people assume you get here and then, oh, well, there's always someone who can help you get to the next level of where you need to go, whether it's how you think or how you react. I mean, there's always that. And also, we all bring our own experiences. And for me, when I started thinking about mentoring after I was elected first many, many years ago, the first thing I did was go back to a housing project in the city where I live, Yonkers. And I started a program called JAM. The acronym is Just About Me, because I wanted people to know that this program was just about them, not me. I realized in my circle, because of the opportunities to do the networking and so on and so forth, that I got to meet lawyers, I got to meet doctors, I got to meet business leaders. And I also knew that when I was in the project, I didn't meet any of those people. And chances are, if I'm gonna meet a doctor, I was asthmatic, I was very sick. I never, you know, knew anything but how can you help me? And the same thing in many of these communities, you meet an attorney, it's not under the best circumstances. And you just go down there. So I was thinking, how do I bring the people I know are too busy to come every week to mentor or whatever, but if I bring you one person that you can sit and talk to for an hour on a Saturday afternoon, at least you could say in your life, I met a doctor. And it's demystified. So that was what I did when I was able to have more time. Since then, Those kinds of things are not part of my life, but I certainly continue to support them. But in my role, I can bring interns in, and I do all the time. In my district offices in Albany, there are young people in and out all the time. And one of the other things that happen is, especially aspiring public servants and people who want to run, it's like, I need a mentor, it's got to be you. And I'm always honest with them. You know, I don't have the ability to sit with you every week. I don't. So, but what I will do is don't neglect the moment that you got a time to sit here and tell me that you need a mentor. I got 5 minutes for you. What can I do? How can I help you? I realize that I'll never be able to kind of grab everybody along, but if the quality time, if I make you recognize that this is a moment, take advantage of it. Don't worry about what can happen in some distant future, but right now you have me and I'm with you, and that's how I mentor. And I've found that kindness, the willingness to listen to somebody and not show that you're so important that you can't talk to people, sometimes planting those seeds is more mentoring than an hour with somebody.
Why do I have to come after? So, just picking up on two themes here. The first is the issue of kind of opening your lens to the world. You know, one of the great things about the city we live in is that it's inexhaustible. The nature of the people that you can meet, the way people think, what they talk about. One of the things I love most about our business. But what a mentor can do is open the lens wider for you, enable you to see the world better, and to see it more completely, and also to encounter things you haven't. And the second part of that, the flip side of that, is the network that you create. And it makes me think of, CBRE has a women's network that was established nationally. A colleague of mine in Chicago, Lisa Konitschka, established it in 2000. That is the most vibrant organization, and I think has really played an instrumental role, actually maybe the instrumental role, in the gender comfort, if you will, of our larger company. In addition, we have a wonderful New York chapter, I'm proud to say. The head of our New York chapter, Ariel Ball, please wave your hand there, Ariel. She is this year's chapter, and we do not just real estate stuff together. We go to the Met's annual, the Met lets us come and look at their fashion and whatever, and we build this great bond. And then I have people that I personally consider that I am their mentor, maybe self-aggrandizing. Some of them I saw here today. I don't know, Andrea Himmel I saw Marion Klein, I saw Marion Klein, I saw Rachel Loeb, who's like a new friend to me, and those are people that really the only thing I've done with them is widen their circle of acquaintance, to make sure they know the Kathy Wiles of this world, that they know the amazing array of people, male and female, that they can access in their professional life. And I can't tell you the pride I take in how their career, I've been doing this actually now for more than 10 years with this circle, their careers have blossomed, but also how deep the bonds between and among them have been. So that's my thought on mentoring.
And really to make sure that we revisit this point of empowering the next generation. One thing we discussed in some of the pre-interviews was how you work with younger generations of women coming up, and you all gave some incredible wisdom to me. I was talking about how I had two wonderful women work for me over the last year, not at Crain's, and saying, you know, why do you put up with X for men? Why do you put up with Y? And it was this real interesting exchange of, well, in life you choose your battles, but then looking back thinking, well, why did I choose so many battles? Why was I always the bigger person? When you're looking at the next generation, have these discussions come up? Have these debates come up? And what advice do you give to these women who who are less tolerant, but I don't mean that that's not necessarily a bad thing.
Well, my advice, and it's not just women of the next generation, but to any woman, is know your stuff. So that, if you know what, within whatever context you're engaging, if you know what you know, then you don't have to put up with anything.
Right.
So that's my message. And the other message is make sure that you always have someone that you can bounce things off on. And so it's not just about being embattled. It really is in how you can broaden your sphere of influence, broaden your network, and never believe that what you're doing or accomplishing is because of just you. That the only way that you're going to be able to be successful is to bring people with you. That's the message that I give.
I think we live in an environment where I think I'm trying to get what you're asking. Like, are people trying too hard to make a point of like the bro community versus the?
I think there's a generational difference that you have women coming up within the ranks of power now who are less tolerant of things that, Senator Cousins, we discussed this. They're less tolerant of some of the bro culture. They're less tolerant of that behavior. Things that I perhaps would just overlook to get to my film being made, my story being published, et cetera, et cetera. But they're not always wrong. Just because I don't choose to fight every battle doesn't mean they're wrong. And that seems to be a fundamental generational difference.
For sure. I had it yesterday in my office. And there was this whole like, well, it's this and that's not okay, and they're throwing the baseball over the trading desk or whatever, and I was thinking to myself, like, if that's like the least of the problem, like, oh, so some of us lived in a different generation where you had to pick your battles. Like, you're just not gonna say everything's not okay, because there was a lot that was not okay. And the great thing is, like, every day it gets better, and the whole new generation of people making it's not okay. Like, this is a work environment. You can do that at home. You can do that in wherever free time you want to do whatever you want to do with whichever people, not in a work environment. It's not okay. It's just not okay. And empowering those people, any people, male, female, doesn't matter, to say, it's not okay. Now let's get back to work. And then making it not a big deal, where it was such a big deal for some of us, we just sort of like picked our battles. And I don't think you have to pick your battles anymore.
I had so much fun listening to that. I think about my life, and most people who know what, it's just such an interesting. First of all, I will say that the only reason I'm the leader is because my conference elected me to be that. And the majority of my conference are enlightened men. So I will put that out there. You don't get to do that unless, everybody's on board. Also, this year, my conference, I had 15 brand new people out of 39. So that's almost half. And all of the people who are in the conference, we're all senators, so everybody's extremely important. And there's a huge variety of people there, geographically, demographically. I've got, senators who are, early 20-somethings, and everybody came in with a fire in their belly. And everybody came in with a promise of what they were going to do and how they were going to do it. You getting a sense of my world? You hearing me? And everybody had a fight to fight. And that's where the mentoring comes in, and that's where it all, I've got people say, well, they did this. Why did you let them do that? Because everybody has to figure out for themselves, in the space that they are in, what's okay and what's not okay. You can show them, you can lead by example, you can tell them diplomatically, but we all know that we learn best from experience. And so those of us who have steady hands need to make sure our hands are steady. And there are things that in this generation are just not okay. And everybody has to know that there are certain things that are not okay. And once we've established what no longer, and again, I'm in what is a pretty male-dominated field, and I'm sure none of you know any of the things that happen in Albany over the years. But the reality is that we do draw the line on certain things that are not okay. And every other battle that you come with, you'll finally gradually decide whether or not it's worth fighting. But again, it goes back to the power of you. Who are you?
So I'm again going to pick up on sharing. Listen, every day you get up in the morning, you have to make the following decision. Where am I placing my energy? Okay? Because every day counts, every hour counts. You got to put it where you think it will produce whatever the goals are that you've set for yourself and your life and those of your loved ones. So, if you are in a hostile work environment, you really only have two choices. It's really binary as far as I'm concerned, okay? It's either worth it for you to tough it out, to try and make change, to try and when I talked to Christine, I said at the end of the day, you have to be able to execute. You're nothing if you can't execute. You can have the biggest ideas in the world, but you can't bring them to closure, then you're just a dreamer. So the question you have to ask yourself is, what's it worth to me in this hostile environment to execute, and can I execute in this environment? If the answer is no, get out of that environment. The beauty, again, of the scale of the world that we're in here, there are a lot of choices out there. It's painful to change, it's painful to move, but I have to tell you, there are some people you will never change. Your goal in life may be to try and make the world more sensitive to women's issues and behavior that's appropriate, but if that isn't your life's calling, and you don't want to devote your life to that, and you're in an environment where you are required to do that too much, go somewhere else. I gave my sister this advice many moons ago, my beloved sister. She had a wonderful job at a network. She was a producer-writer. And I said to her, she said, they don't get me. She always had a big sense of humor and kind of strong personality. I don't know where, it must be genetic in our family. And I said to her, Joni, there's somebody out there who thinks your sense of humor is great. She moved from the network she was at. She went to work for Tom Brokaw at what she always called Nightly News, and then later Brian Williams, who, by the way, was fabulous with her. And it made all the difference in the world. They got her. They knew how to behave. They're out there, folks. All I can say is just pick your battles, place your energy.
I just want to thank you. You've been wonderful and inspiring, and I just want to thank you for being on this panel today.
Yes, thank you so much to our panel and to Christine. That was really a great conversation. I'm thinking about it as I'm listening. We're talking about how to define power and what it means, and you think about the power to influence, you think about the power to lead. But I take away from this today is the power to inspire. And I really appreciate everything you folks said here today and share with us. So thank you so much for being here. And thanks to everyone here. It's been a great afternoon for us. We really appreciate your time. I would just like to quickly thank again our presenting sponsor, American Airlines, our silver sponsors, CBRE and PNC Bank, our participating sponsor, Lafayette 148, and our gift bag sponsor, Notel. Thank you all for joining us today. It's been a great afternoon. We really appreciate it. And thank you for support of Crain's. Have a good day.